Meets World.
What up, bruhs?
What up, bruhs?
And welcome to Boy Meets World.
What is Boy Meets World?
Your Boy Meets World Fancast. I am Siege.
And I'm Tony Curtis. I like the crescendo that's going, like you're building towards something. I like it.
Well, we are building towards something. Keep going.
I was just gonna say, recently our listeners probably don't know this. We've switched to Saturday morning recordings. We used to record in the evenings after work on the weekdays. Now it's like early morning, and this has become such a Saturday morning routine with me. I make my breakfast, me and my wife watch Boy Meets World, and then I sit with you and I talk about it, and there's just energy. I'm like, it's a great way to start the day.
One Saturday morning. Yeah, honestly.
It feels like that. It feels like that. It's great. It's great.
Absolutely. It's funny. My partner and I, we did the exact same thing. It's kind of like I make waffles, we're watching the episode, and it's really crazy because I've been so for years cagey about this, especially with him, because this isn't nowhere near what he would have watched.
You mean the podcast, like Boy Meets World? You don't really watch it with him?
Well, no, like not like he's older. It's just not his genre.
He's the Wonder Years generation. So
he actually, like, we were talking about this because he was like, he literally this morning he was like, so why this show? He was like, why? Like, what's going on here? And I was like, it's been 4 years.
If you have to ask, you don't get it.
But he was like, oh, I was the Growing Pains generation, and I was like, yeah,
interesting, yeah.
A very good point.
Which, funny enough, Growing Pains was part of the idea that spawned Boy Meets World. They were like, hey, instead of focusing on the older brother, let's focus on the middle brother instead. So that's how they pitched it, was Growing Pains, but the middle child focus.
Yeah, I love it.
What should we do first? Morning announcements?
Yeah, you got some morning announcements. Okay, we have quite a few. So I was going through and I was reading some of our reviews, and I wanted to read one of the latest reviews that I thought was just really great. It's from a Netasmith, I think is what Netasmith. I don't know. Either way,
I hope we're saying that right.
Yeah. So sorry if I'm not, but 5 stars, titled Masterclass, and it says, these guys could teach a college course in Boy Meets World as related to the social situations of the real world. You all are continuing to peel off new layers of a show I've seen a million times. You highlight things I've never realized. It makes the 90s sitcom seem like a brand new show. My new favorite podcast.
That's the best. Oh my God. Thanks so much.
Right? That's what you want to hear.
If I could teach a college course on Boy Meets World, if that could be my job, guys, I would take it in a heartbeat.
At this
Class
point in time,
dismissed.
At this point in time, I got to tell you, it is definitely something that, it's definitely something that could be done. The number of college courses.
I think I heard that someone's teaching a college course on like Taylor Swift. Like anyone could teach a college course on anything.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, and then also, I would love to. Speaking of feedback, we would love for you guys to continue to reach out to us at Bro Meets World on social. Give us the 5 stars reviews as we just kind of read. This is another comment that we got from another longtime listener, I would have to say. And so I just this was in response to our episode. I think it's called Friendly Persuasion.
Oh, last week's episode. Yeah.
Yeah, last week's episode. And I think at this point in time, it's 2 weeks ago for us. But it is the episode where we were talking about Shawn and Angela being approached by the other girl who was like, oh, y'all together?
Oh, at the college mixer where Shawn wants to meet new people.
Exactly.
And Angela's not new people. This is the new person that came up and was like, y'all together? Yeah. I remember.
So I just want to play a little bit of that and then discuss it as well. One second.
I don't know if you can play this on the pod or not or whatever, but I just wanted to thank you guys for pointing out the gal in this episode who's like, oh, you guys are together, to Shawn and Angela, and the fact that it's just like totally racist, because I swear, as I get older, a more and more increasingly basic white bitch, just did not ever pick up on the fact that it was racist. And and no, you know, if you're not outside your bubble, you're never going to pick up on like these different things. And you guys are right as usual. And I just wanted to thank you guys for pointing out this and just every other, like, you know, if something's racist or just not quite right, or just, you know, whatever it is, you know, you guys are like a really, really, I think important podcast, you know, for this reason. It's not just because, you know, it's fun to like listen to you guys, and of course, but it's because you are like, no, this is this perspective, and that's, quite frankly, you'll be like, no, this is what is happening. And then, you know, otherwise we may not pick up on it. So I just wanted to thank you guys a lot. And goodbye.
All right.
Amazing.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Wow. Well, you know what? First of all, I want to thank both of those listeners for writing us and for leaving a voice message. I love the positive feedback, you know. And it's just so, like, it's so nice just to know that like we're resonating, because I have to say, like, to everyone else, like when me and Siege were like, oh, we're gonna talk about Boy Meets World for 7 years.
We did not. Like, no, how long have we been doing this?
Like, we're gonna spend 7 years talking about Boy Meets World. Like, we just didn't think that like other people would understand what we're doing, because we have such a deep love for the show, and a lot of times the things we point out can make it seem like we're criticizing the show itself, but it's really criticizing the time period and like what our culture was like and what was deemed acceptable and what was deemed okay in 1998 versus now. And I just love that like our listeners are like hip to it and they understand what we're doing, and that this isn't bashing Boy Meets World, it's praising the show that was a shining gem during a time period that was just very different than now. So I thank you guys so much for the feedback. And if you guys want to leave voice messages, you can actually do so on our website. If on our Anchor website, you can actually leave a voice message that we can play on our show. So if you guys have any other questions or comments or feedback or anything, definitely go to our Anchor website and leave us a voice message that we can play on future episodes.
And as we said earlier, please leave reviews, comments at Bruh Meets World. You can email us at bruhmeetsworld@gmail.com. We greatly appreciate it. So continuing our morning announcement, I just want to say, so I finally did it. I listened to Pod Meets World.
For the first time?
Very first time I did it, and it's because they had Trina McGee on, and I was like, it was very enlightening, very, very, very much enlightening, and I thought that you and the listeners would enjoy me kind of listening to it for the first time, because everyone has been like, oh my god, have you listened? I did that thing where it's like I wasn't like really looking at my phone, I was just kind of listening and doing stuff, and you instantly get the chemistry, you instantly like I don't even need to know who's talking. I like just by the voices or what's being said. There's a camaraderie there, which you'd love to hear in a podcast, and there's a history and a familiarity. So that's really good to know when it's a show that you've loved so much that these characters and the actors who play them also get along in some way. So that was really fun and really positive.
Any major takeaways from the Tina McGee episode?
If you don't think that that's where I'm going, one of the things is, so they have Trina McGee on, and they talked about how like she was like one of their number one guests. Everyone wants them on. They're constantly asking about Angela, and there's just so much. One of the things she talks about is like one of the things that she thought would be like her big break is she gets an audition at for the Cosby Show, and it is amazing because on the pod you can hear the oxygen leave the room. Like you can hear like she's just telling her story. She's like, so I'm gonna go see Cosby, and like you could I just felt a shift, and it's so hilarious because it's one of those things to where 2007 would have been like, oh, that's so cool, blah blah blah. Now everyone's like, you know, like and it's this thing where everyone's quiet. I can just tell that these white people did not want to talk about this. But I also will give credit that she's just like talking about it for the reality that it is. She's not not praising. She's just like, no, this is the thing. And it was a really big deal at the time. And she talks about how she like went to the audition, but she didn't get it. and there's like this van that they would put you on when you didn't get it to like drive you back home. She was like, so I'm so upset because I'm on the van and like I didn't get it. And then Ryder, who I'm loving more and more, Ryder was like, no, it sounds like it's a good thing you didn't get that part. And like, so it's, like he just like kind of acknowledges it for what it is. And I thought that was really great. Like this reality of like, hey, it's a really uncomfortable time. It's a really uncomfortable topic, but that was my reality. And that was something that like I really wanted to do, and that would have been like a gold star. Now in hindsight, did I dodge a bullet? Absolutely. But like also, so that, and then also Ryder just being very comfortable enough to be like, no, let's discuss it, let's actually
let's get into it. Can I we don't have to get into it, but I just want to quickly point out I also auditioned for the Cosby Show and met Bill Cosby. We could talk about that later. What? But
are you serious? Wait, how have I known you for half of my life?
The story?
And you have never mentioned this.
I'm going to give you the quick abridged version of this because I know people are going to be curious. I was a pageant baby when I was a kid.
Very cute kid.
We'll pull a picture up. Yeah, I did. I got like pageants. I did all that stuff. And because I lived in New Jersey at the time, like Atlantic City, I met Donald Trump doing that shit. Like it was just a thing that happened. And so I had an agent and I had headshots, and my mom took me to go audition for the Cosby Show. And actually I almost made it. So Sandra, his older daughter, has twins on the show. And I was auditioning to be the boy twin. And the only reason I didn't get it was because I was too tall compared to the girl they wanted to play my sister. If my height had been different, I would have been a child star on the Cosby Show. So I just want to throw that out there. That's a part of my life. But knowing the fact that you've never known that story is yeah. That
is hilarious. I can't believe I've known you forever and you've never mentioned that. That is crazy to me.
Well, it was like this was before my like long-term memory develops. Like it's one of those things that like happened to me that I know about because my mom talks to me about it.
Yeah.
But I have no memory of this. I'm sure there was a van. I don't remember the
van. So what's also funny to that is, so you would have played the part that Gary Leroy Gray played, who is the male twin. Like, that is so hilarious. All right. Sorry, you guys. This is just what we're doing right now. Yeah. But a few things. One, like, do you just look at Gary Leroy Gray sometimes and be like, "You could have my life"? Like,
well, I don't know. It's so funny because, like, when I was younger and I heard those stories, and especially when Cosby was just like, before all of this, people don't understand who Cosby was for Black people. So, like, it was just a different conversation. It was just like, wow, what a cool opportunity. But again, in retrospect, you're just like, hey, would I really have liked being a child star? Would I really have liked being in that life? And, even hearing Ryder and Will and Danielle talk about it, the pros and cons of it, I don't know. Like, it's just one of those things to where, like, it was a multiverse version of me got on that show and probably has, had to deal with child stardom, but it's not
that is amazing. So what's crazier about this particular story is, as a baby, and I'm talking like newborn child, my parents took me on my very first flight. Same thing, a story being told to me. Very first flight. For those of you who don't know, and I'm not going to get into the specifics, but I'm named after Malcolm Jamal Warner. So like, my parents.
How did I not know that?
See, look.
What is going on?
I'm named after Malcolm Jamal Warner. So my mom loves the Cosby Show.
That's the blackest shit I've ever heard, by the way.
Yeah. My parents take me on a plane to go meet my dad's family. Like, we live in one area, we're flying to another area. And on the plane, we are sitting next to the actress who plays Sandra. And she's like, oh my God, your baby's so cute. Like, she holds, like, it's like this whole thing. So same thing where it's just like, I love that it was Sandra specifically. And I just think that's so hilarious that like, around the same time. I love that it's Sandra that was the Venn
The
diagram.
fact that me, you, and Trina McGee are all connected in the Cosbyverse.
Oh my God, the Cosbyverse. You're not wrong. You're not wrong.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, thank you guys for letting us do that little tangent. Okay, okay. Last thing that I will say, and I could swear we can get into this episode, but they also talk about how. So one of the legendary things is how Trina McGee is not in the final episode, right?
Yes.
So it turns out, and this is for years.
Spill the tea, bro. Spill the tea. Spill the tea. I need to know.
She says that someone came up to her and said, the main cast doesn't want you in the final episode. They want it to be just, and reminder for those of you who don't know, the actress who plays Angela Trina McGee is older than the rest of the cast. She's like, I think 10 years older than most of them, but she is closer in age to Will Friedle, but like in general, she's 10 years older. She was just playing a teen. So for her being an older individual and a mom and all this other stuff, when someone says, hey, they don't want you there, and she's always known that they've had like their own little clique and all this other stuff, she just took that for what it was and was like really upset, especially since like,
wow,
they said that to her and they're like, they don't want you in the final episode, so we're going to give you this kind of like send off. But the rest of the cast is flabbergasted. They're like, wow, what are you talking about? No one has ever said that. We didn't understand what was going on. Also, again, it's like, we're teen actors. If someone's just like for me, it felt like one of those things where like someone was like, hey, they don't want you there, and then the next day everyone else showed up and was like, where's Trina? And they're like, oh, she couldn't make it for the final episode. And they're like, okay, you know, like yeah, weird, but I guess she had other things to do. So it's just one of those messed up things.
I can't wait to listen to the full episode, but I will say it is always rubbed me the wrong way that Angela wasn't in the final episode and Rachel was.
Oh, they talk about, they said that specific thing. They were like, again, everyone's confused because they were like, why would she not be? But everyone else is. So it's one of those things where it's like, when you hear it and you hear this background, I know everyone's like, it's just a show, you guys are reading too much into things, but knowing the background and hearing these things,
yeah, there was some shady shit going on.
I'm like, oh, we're right. We were picking up on stuff that someone was like, oh, no one will be able to know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And 30 years later, we're like, does that seem sus to you? So anyway, I just thought that was I thought that was really fun. I thought that you should definitely listen to it, and I thought that everyone would enjoy hearing me listen to the podcast.
Wow. Gotta get into that shit, bro. The tea is hot. It's hot.
Okay, are you ready to do this episode?
I cannot wait to talk about episode 606, Hogs and Kisses. This episode makes fucking no sense to me. I'm so hot for this episode. I have so much to say. I can't wait to get into it.
Okay, I guess we should start with tell me about it.
Oh yeah. Tell us about it. Shawn and Topanga pretend to fuck. Cory's transformed to a raging cuck, while Rachel is tested if she can handle their muck.
Okay. That was creativity. So happy.
I don't know what this episode's point is. I don't know what the lesson is. I don't know what is going on from start to finish.
Okay, let's just get into the topic about it. For those listening, this is season 6, episode 6, Hogs and Kisses. After a director has Shawn and Topanga kiss while making a film, Cory, certain the duo has been secretly harboring emotional feelings for each other, directs them to go on a date and explore their true emotions. Meanwhile, in a B storyline, Eric and Jack pretend to be mannerly in front of Rachel. Okay, so
no part of this episode makes sense.
First,
A storyline, B storyline.
I was like, I have to approach this episode differently than I approach almost any other episode. Because even though this is an iconic episode and so much about it is just remembered and in the highlight reels and all this other stuff memed, I also was like, this is a whole different world. It's like surreal reality. I don't know what we're doing. This, like, you literally have to suspend disbelief in order to follow along with anything. I was like, this is one of the most sitcom-y of sitcom storylines, because a lot of it just couldn't fit in reality.
No one's actions follow any kind of logic. There's no conversations between these characters. And like, and I know we're going to get into all the details, but the thing that's so frustrating for me is that on a larger scale, these storylines don't make sense.
Yes.
In the sense that Eric and Jack, this is October, November. They've been living with Rachel since June. What's with all this? We need to put on mask shit. Like, this wasn't around before, so how are you just gonna start pretending now? Whatever. Look, a storyline is one long, drawn-out, nonsensical story. Also, Cory can learn the same lesson that Topanga learned last year at the art gallery, that a kiss sometimes doesn't mean anything.
Yes.
Guys, we're gonna get into it.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. So let's just start with the A storyline as usual. To do that, we open up with Cory and Topanga filming kind of like the Pembroke welcome video or whatever. My first thought was, why them? Like,
thank you. This was my question. Why the fuck are freshmen doing this? This is something that sophomore, maybe a senior, like, not freshmen. They just got here. He can't even register for classes. How is he in this? Come on.
They do acknowledge it. They were like, oh, we were voted. It's just one of those things where it's like,
no, that does not happen on the college campus. No one knows you. How can they vote for you? You just started. No.
Exactly. So I was like, okay. But to that point, I do want to do a little bit of a roll call, because we get the director, Simon, is played by Tom Gallup, who is one of those character actors who I'm sure you've seen him in many of things. He was in The Pretender. Do you remember The Pretender? Did you ever see that?
I do not. I do.
Oh my God. Okay. Sorry, you guys, tangents. But The Pretender is, I don't even know if it lives up to, of course, my memory, but it's one of those like CBS shows that like you have to suspend disbelief in order to even watch it, but also it's so fascinating and amazing. There's this guy who is like a ex-secret agent or like a sleeper agent or something like that, and he was raised to be a killer or something. I'm butchering this, but anyway, he just goes through life pretending to be other people or pretending to do other occupations to solve crimes. And of course, there's this huge, big agency that's out trying to track him, but they can never quite catch him. And they're always like one step behind. Anyway, you got to check the show out. It's crazy. I'll see if I can find you a clip.
What year is this?
I don't even know. I know this is the early 90s. It's just one of those shows, you know?
It seems like a show only a white man could star in.
Yeah. It's definitely one of those. So he was in The Pretender. He's also in X-Files. He's in Will and Grace.
I don't recognize him from anything. The only thing I recognize him from is being the pervy director from this episode.
He is in ER. He's in Time Cop, Diagnosis Murder.
Whoa. Time Cop? Damn Time Cop? Rewatch is happening today.
He's in Sister, Murphy Brown, Baywatch.
So he's like a 90s TV guy. Yeah.
He's one of that guys. And I know him most from Will and Grace, where he plays their friend Rob. So anyway,
okay.
He's a really cool character actor, and so the moment I saw him, I was like, all right, cool. Also, I just want to say, Tom Gallup, your IMDb photo, kind of good, kind of cute. Good for you.
Oh. Hot for Tom.
Yeah, just saying. Yeah. And then so anyway, going back to the episode, why are they doing that?
Yeah, I have a question, and this is probably doesn't this. I don't want to like get out of control here with my illogical mind. When I am watching a college recruitment video, I see zero making out on a
Yes.
on a university basis. If you think I didn't go on like several college websites after watching this episode to see if there's a video of people just making out, being like, "Yeah, you can probably get laid here," what are we doing?
Again, this was definitely one of those moments where it's like, I do not know. I have not found one from the 90s. But the idea that one of the things in your college recruitment video, an academic university, would be, hey, maybe you could get laid here. And then like even like the character of the director is just all pervy with it, where he's just like, yeah,
He's so
give me more
pervy. He's like,
passion.
yeah, give me more.
We're on a
The
college
whole-
campus and you don't know these people. What are we doing?
The whole catalyst for this is Cory and Topanga are in this, and Cory, who we have seen it behind and in front of the camera multiple times throughout this series. We saw him in front of the camera doing the special on Janitor Bud in season 3. The same thing when he was like tracking down Shawn's other mysterious half brother who was stealing shit in front of the camera doing stuff. Completely fine. All of a sudden, he can't speak words if a camera's in front of him.
I thought the exact same thing. I was like, we've seen this before. Why is he the one who's choking up? Don't get me wrong.
No.
In the earliest of early seasons, he did choke up, but also like at one point in time, he wanted to be like a video director.
Yeah.
So what is going on? I don't understand what we're doing here. But also it was one of those, like, this is why I said I just had to like enter the world of sitcom, because it's one of those things where Shawn goes and he's like, I can't wait to hear you say the word curriculum. And the director's like, wait, what was that? He goes, curriculum. He's like, oh, this is our guy. And it's like, it's definitely one of those moments there. It happens all the time in sitcoms where apparently, I feel like this is just kind of like Hollywood seeping in. Very often in sitcoms, someone will audition for one role, and then their friend who has zero interest in acting will be there as support, and the director will be like, you're the one.
There's a great episode of Fresh Prince where DL Hughley plays his friend who goes down to like audition for like stand up, and then Will is just funny in like the waiting room, and they're like, we want him too, and I'm just like, no, you like, that's not how fucking Hollywood works. Like, you need chops.
Well, so here's the thing. To that point, there's an episode of Living Single where Sinclair goes in on audition and Max goes with her, and Max gets the role. It's one of the funniest episodes to me. But yeah, it's just, apparently it's just a trope where it's constantly people driving their friends to auditions only to leave with the part.
Yeah. I really, when they were like setting it up to like, oh, Shawn, why don't you do it? Like, I feel comfortable with it. It's fine. And Shawn's like, are you sure? Like, I don't really feel comfortable. Topanga's like, I don't feel comfortable. And Cory's like, why would I have a problem with you being the person to welcome people to Pembroke? That's not what this episode's about. It so quickly takes a left turn to Perville. And when the way that Cory's inner cuck is unleashed at the sight of them kissing, when I saw him in his underwear watching that video over and over again, come on, bro. Like, what is happening?
All right, a few things. One is this idea of, in that moment, I was like, what happened was Shawn read the script. And Shawn was like, I know something that Cory doesn't, which is I know what the next scene is. And that's clearly something that Cory has not considered. And they have this moment of Topanga being like, I'm uncomfortable doing this if Cory isn't going to. And I was like, again, this just feels very male writery, very male fantasy. Because if you're going to do this, you're going to do this. Or you could say, oh, like, we're supposed to be couples, like she should be equally. But the idea of her being like, I'm not doing it unless Cory also approves of it, it's not a thing. Calm down.
Well, also, it's the thing that's so ridiculous is that, like, at no point does Shawn or Topanga hesitate to just full on make out.
Yeah,
Is this how the 90s worked? When they're like people would come on to do guest spots on Boy Meets World, that they're just like, oh, okay, now you and Ryder just make out. Go. We're not gonna give you any heads up. We're not gonna let you like have a conversation about it as actors beforehand. I'm just gonna say go kiss. Like what's
I will
happening?
say that is a very good point. This idea of them being hesitant to even have Shawn swap. But then he's like, hey, improv. How about you two kiss? And they're like, seems natural, very clear direction.
Fine. This is an educational video. Why wouldn't we full on make out?
So again, it's one of those things where it allows Ben Savage to be turned up to an 11.
Which he's been consistently this season, right? Like this
absolutely.
is the season 6 Ben Savage is just manic.
Yes, absolutely. This is like I feel like they are almost Urkel-fying him.
Which
you know what
is
I mean?
like, yeah, with just being like, I don't know what it is. It's not anxious. It's like
play it to an 11.
Yeah, he's just very over the top. And like every episode is about, I think what's strange is that we went most of season 5 without seeing funny Cory. Cory was the dramatic, like, oh, I'm in a love triangle. Like, we just haven't seen him work his comedy chops. So it kind of seems sudden that, like, after a season of him having this really, like, dramatic acting stuff, he's just thrown into just like, hey, no, you're the new Will Friedle. We need you to just be at that level. And it's just, it's shock. It's like, it's uneasy. It's like an uneasy transition.
Yeah.
Okay, so Shawn and Topanga make out in this video. Cory freaks out in front of everyone. They're like, oh, it's not a big deal. Like, and you know what's really interesting too is that like right after Cory has this huge freak out, neither Shawn nor Topanga have any empathy for him. Like, oh, I just made out with his fiance. Of course he's upset. Like, there's none of that. There's just like, oh, it's just Cory being Cory again. And
please don't make a big deal out of this.
Yeah, and it's almost as if they're just like accepting of the fact that Cory is gonna blow this out of proportion, and that's just who he is, and it's like a lovable quirk of his. And I'm just like, is it though? Like, is it?
I will say, here's the thing. In their defense, he does. So they're right. It's one of those things where it's like for me, it feels like one of those situations where it's like we could have a rational conversation, but that time has passed. Cory now has it, and it's just gonna be what it's gonna be.
There's a point. I will say this. There's a point where right after they film in the student union, they cut to his dorm room. He is in his a tank and boxers, rewatching this video over and over and over again. Again, very pervy. Very pervy. I don't understand how this isn't so pervy. And he's also like so to an 11 that he's almost coked up. He's screaming. He's ripping his shirt off. He's trying to fight with the person next door.
If you don't think we're talking about that.
But the thing I want to point out is I was watching this with my wife and they were like, oh, so they just had to throw in a reason to show Ben Savage's. And I was like, was actually great noticing that because last episode when he was in the shower, we had a shirtless Ben Savage scene too. And I was like, I wonder, like, don't get me wrong, Ben looks great. Ben is in great shape. But yeah. I'm just like, why is it all of a sudden that we're seeing a lot of shirtless Cory?
I felt like it was one of those things where he is growing up, he's coming into his body. I'm not gonna lie, specifically in that bedroom scene, he looking good. He
lean.
Like, looking lean, looking good. The hair is tight. I'm here for it. I was like, okay. But like
he taking care of him curls, you know, he's
care of curls. Exactly. I was like, no, absolutely. I was like, this feels like a moment where he wanted someone, either he wanted to show off his body or someone wanted to be like, hey, you've been working out. Let's like use that to our advantage. And I could even see like that being like something they use for the teaser, like him like ripping his shirt. You know what I mean? So go ahead.
Yes. I was just gonna say, when we cut back, he is now with this guy Isaac, who he was yelling with next door. They're both crying watching this video as Cory calls Topanga a tramp. And he is just lamenting over how he was heartbroken. He just screams out, Topanga! And Isaac, the man who he is crying with, screams out, Fred! To which Cory gives a gay panic moment. And I was just like, are we still doing this, Boy Meets World? Are we still playing this game with?
So it was one of those, it's so funny that you said it, because to me, it was, like I said, it was so hard to think about this episode, because in that moment, Cory gives kind of like a side eye, but he doesn't panic and get up.
You're right.
He doesn't like, like there are moments he doesn't like. We're in that kind of don't ask, don't tell phase of.
That's so what this feels like.
It's very Seinfeld. Not that there's a problem with it,
Yeah. And it's just that, like, multiple times throughout the show, whenever they've made like a joke, because they used to make these jokes about Frankie all the time, being like, oh, is he gay? Is he not? Are you saying I'm gay? Like, he would just randomly say stuff like that. Like, it's almost as if they can't, like, they don't have a problem with it, but it's other. It's weird. It's like, huh? Wait, what? Oh,
the exact quote from Seinfeld is not that there's anything wrong with that. And that's kind of like what it is. It's one of those, not that there's anything wrong with that, but I just realized that I'm shirtless, I'm in my boxers, and I'm with a man who's bigger than me, stronger than me, and could be interested in me. Which I always think is very interesting, because you're right. It's something that we see the most often, because we had this happen with a football player in high school. We had this happen with Frankie, as you said. It's always bigger guys where they feel like this is the joke. And I think that what we're seeing is a guy never really has to think about whether or not, like, he is open to the same kind of sexual vulnerability as a woman, until you get a
intimidating man
who's bigger than them, and then all of a sudden they're like, oh, wait a minute, if this is something that he wants to pursue and I don't, I'm in trouble. And it's like, crazy.
Could women even imagine?
You don't understand what it's like for
gosh,
me.
These women will never get out of your bubbles, lady.
So anyway, I just thought that was very, very interesting. But again, you're right, in like what was a gay panic comedic moment, they also didn't overdo it like they do so many other things.
Sure.
So
the moment itself just felt kind of gay. Like, they're just in their underwear watching these two people make out on repeat. I was just like, what's just this whole thing makes no sense to me. Like, Cory is like so convinced that there's passion between these two people in a way that just like it doesn't resonate. Like, there's nothing about his character that rings like, oh, this is true. I can see why Cory feels this way. I've seen the evidence over seasons to support why he feels intimidated by Shawn. If that's what it was like, oh, Shawn's single now. I'm intimidated by my friend who was always so much cooler than me. They could have done that, and that would have made complete sense. That wasn't what this was.
It's literally just, first of all, it's an insecurity. And again, what they do in these episodes is Cory has an insecurity, which, don't get me wrong, it is an insecurity and it's something that we could talk about, but they just have Cory blow it out of proportion. And you eventually need someone to bring it down. Now, that being said, the show takes an additional turn when Cory insists that they go on a date. He's like, yeah, you have to.
We have to talk about this.
Okay. Never get past this. And I was like, in what world? And then again, it just keeps getting ludicrous after this.
Cory kicks Shawn out of the dorm. He deadbolts the lock, which, by the way, is illegal. You cannot do that to your roommate. Like, we saw this on Worst Roommate Ever. So Shawn's sleeping in the student union. Topanga comes down to talk to him like, hey, isn't Cory being crazy? Yup. Cory walks in. They expect him to be over the top. He's like, listen, guys, I think that you should go on a date to pursue whatever this connection is.
Wait. Before we get that, we get the most iconic of iconic moments, which I love. This is one of those later seasons.
Oh, I don't think it happens until after, because I feel like he's like talking. He's like, I feel like hey, guys.
No, he goes in. He goes, because he goes, wait a minute. Because he starts. You're right. He interested him. He's like, I'm going to be very calm. And then he goes, what is this?
Yeah.
And then he goes, removes the cover. underpants. And the moment I knew that this was the underpants, like I to this day, if I see or hear, like if I say the word underpants, I'm going underpants. Like it's such a great, crazy, and that's what makes this episode hard because it is ludicrous. It is out there, but also it is iconic and it is filled with fun.
I will admit the underpants line, very iconic moment. It comes up a lot in like flashbacks of the show. This episode is bad. Regardless of this iconic moment, this episode makes no sense. So like I understand the underpants, very iconic, but just like if you were to take even that out of it, like all we really have is Cory being manic, like really like almost dangerously manic. So I and the fact that he's constantly being like, you guys need to figure out the sexual tension. I'm gonna set the date, I'm gonna do everything. It's just like, do you want to watch them hook up? Like, where is this going for you?
That's what we're not talking about that we need to talk about. We've talked about for years that Cory is in love with Shawn. And we've had these conversations of like the difference of being homo-romantic and homosexual. And Cory is clearly homo-romantic with Shawn and loves Shawn, but is heterosexual with Topanga. And is, you know, attracted to Topanga. So maybe there is a little bit of, maybe what we're seeing is Cory's own gay panic. He saw Topanga kissing Shawn and it was like, am I into this? I am into this.
Well, there is a moment later in the episode where Angela says that Shawn calls out Cory's name when they're like hooking up.
Again, and he's flattered by that. He was like, "Ooh, in what context?"
Okay. So, all right. So the underpants thing happens. He tells him to go out on a date, and he does this thing where he's like, "What? We have to do this, or this is going to haunt us for the rest of our lives." And Topanga's like, "Why does everything have to haunt us for the rest of our lives?" Can that be the focus of the episode, Cory? Why does everything have to be a long-term life decision? Like, bruh, just calm down. There's a really funny moment where Cory wants to go see Angela about this, and Angela's like, he's like, "What you up to, Angela?" She's like, "Oh, I'm studying white history. You people contributed a lot to this nation." Queen, yes, Queen. We need you.
There are moments where they do, the writers, whoever decided to do these, and they're always like throwaway lines. So it's like whoever did it, they're like, I'm gonna slip this in, and it'll be funny and it'll get a laugh. But also, it's someone who someone gets it. It's hilarious.
Well, honestly, okay, can I just say something? Because we went from like really having very few acknowledgments about color in season 5 with Angela
about it.
to now, whereas again, like there's little jokes that are popping in and out. I will say this: if we want to try to make this make sense, going from high school where you all have a bunch of white friends to then going to college and just kind of getting a bigger picture of it, it could be that Angela, the character, is kind of waking up to the whiteness around her as well.
Very possible.
I mean, I feel like that was something that I went through, kind of going from like having a lot of white friends in high school and just like seeing life outside of that. So, I mean, if we want to try to make this make sense, that could be the reason why Angela's being a little bit more snarky with her white friends.
Absolutely.
Whiteness. So
she reading her bell hooks.
Hey, we got to.
So funny because you were talking. I watched this episode with my fiance, and we had just come off of an argument discussion or whatever. So the idea that this episode were them being like, "Why does everything have to be a big deal?" My fiance was like, "Did you pick this episode for me?"
Are you trying to say something to me? You trying to prove a point with this show?
And I was like, "What the funny thing
Fuck your
is?"
podcast.
The funny thing is, it's literally just the next episode that we were doing, but it is very hilarious. That again, why does everything have to be for the rest of our lives? Specifically, when you are dealing with an engaged couple, where you are constantly thinking, "Okay, is this what I'm doing for the rest of my life?" Really hilarious, very timely. I just thought that was very funny.
But I will say, to your point, like no one is taking Cory's like hurt about this seriously at all. When really he's like, yo, I just got engaged to this girl and I'm just feeling all of these things. They don't make it about that. They don't make it about like, hey, I'm about to commit my life to this woman and I'm like curious if she's having second thoughts. Like that could have really grounded this story a lot.
That's actually, you know what? I did not think about it even when I told the story, but you are so right. Cory is not just being Cory. Cory is engaged. And
Cory's
as
engaged.
the one who's newly engaged, you do start being like, oh, so this is how it's gonna be.
Yeah. You're
just,
trying to figure out like what's a lifelong thing and what's a right now thing. Like, and that's something we could have really gotten into in like a really meaty way.
That
but
is
instead,
such a really good point. And honestly, like, it's one of those things where it's like you could dedicate, like they play it off in like they play it off and it's so funny and it's so haphazard that it never really occurred to me. But you are absolutely right that this episode would make so much more sense if they just had a line where Cory was like, we're newly engaged. I'm constantly questioning everything. That's why everything is a forever.
And what have also helped too is if they get to college and a bunch of guys start flirting with Topanga and she has to constantly be like, hey guys, I'm actually engaged. And they're like, what? You're engaged? You're 18? Like any of that would have helped support this and ground it and just make it a little bit more, just have some kind of emotional resonance. But instead, we get cow noises from behind the door.
So this is where we're going. Instead of like having this be something where it can actually be a conversation and we can have like a really good Michael Jacobs moment, we go into clownery, literal clownery, where for some reason they thought it would be a good idea. You know who's really feeling insecure right now? My fiance and your best friend. You know what we should do? Mess with his head.
We should make him think you are doing ungodly things to me.
Things that I won't let him do.
I want you to know, okay, so the thing that I'm about to talk about is the scene where Cory's listening through a door and Shawn and Topanga have a script that they're reading. It's very like blatant, like, hey, we're just messing with Cory, like he's being ridiculous. But then they start with the sound effects. And listeners, I want you to turn the volume up just a little bit. The noise that they play through the door, it is unmistakable for fucking, right?
Yeah.
Like that is the noise, the paddle on the ball, right? But it's a sound that's like, hey, just so you know, I'm railing your fiance, bro.
Yes.
Like, what are we? Why?
Yes. And again, so why did we take it here? That's my thing. Again, I've been to college. I don't know a single friend group who would be like, you know, it'd be really funny if we messed with him and made him think that we were having sex. I don't know a situation to where having someone think that you are cheating on them with their best friend works in your favor. I don't know of a situation where you go, you know what would be really fun? If we made them think that we were both terrible people.
Terrible people. Having sex, knowing that he can hear, making loud noises, saying that like, oh, I'm engaged to him and I could care less about this. Like, okay, so we have all of this just like pageantry that just kind of hurt Cory's feelings, which it worked. Cory then is like, hey, Angela, like, you don't get it. They kissed, okay? You can't kiss someone and have it not mean anything. Like, that's where this whole thing was going.
Yes.
Cory, feeling like a kiss can't be a kiss without feelings. I want to, with you, Siege, hop in the DeLorean, go back to last season.
Yeah.
When Cory, over and over again, says to Topanga, oh, me and Lauren kissed, but it didn't mean anything.
So what you're saying is that Cory was lying to Topanga. Because if this is a lesson that Cory is just now learning, one of two things. Either Cory has amnesia.
Yeah.
And just can't remember last year. Or Cory was lying to Topanga just to win her back, because he himself has just said, you don't kiss someone and it not mean something.
It's so lazy from a writer's perspective, because not only do they have Cory feel the same thing that we heard Topanga feel more earnestly last year, of just like he can't kiss her and have it not mean anything. They solve it the same way. They're like, oh, we should have Topanga kiss this other dude at the art gallery and it not mean anything, and then she'll learn, she'll know. And they're like, well, Angela's there. Why don't we have her kiss Cory? It makes perfect sense that Angela would want to make out with Cory just to prove a point. That's not fantasy ridden. That's not just like male ego. That would 100% happen, right? Like, that's how this episode needs to go down. Why?
By the way, a few things. One, it's we really get murky territory with this, because the idea of Angela being like, so you've never thought of me that way, and I was like, okay, this is not good. Again, just let's not do this. But you've never thought of me that way? No. Really? Okay, once. And then he talks about a dream that he had. It was a good dream. It was a really good dream. Again, all of these things, yeah, we get it. People are people, whatever. But the idea that Angela, you're right, Angela would be like, you know what? I'll prove it to you. Yeah. I'm going to mount you and then kiss you. And then when you're like, I felt nothing. You're right. Thank you. Not take that personally at all.
Oh my God. This is the Rachel thing all over again. This is, I'm going to come on to you and trust that you are going to learn the lesson I want you to learn. I am going to mount my best friend's fiance without talking to her. I'm going to kiss my best friend's fiance without saying
to her. Boyfriend's best friend.
And my ex-boyfriend, again, all to prove a point that I hope that this dude who just told me he dreamt about having sex with me isn't going to get weird about me kissing. Like, who would do this? What woman would do this to prove a point? Is what I'm saying.
Again, let's just take gender out of it. I don't know anyone who would be like, let me prove to you that it means nothing by making out with you. Especially if I intend not, like, they don't go, hey, Shawn and Topanga, this just happened.
Yeah.
No, nothing is said. There's no like, hey, by the way, I made out with Angela or any of things like that. It's just like, nope, thank you for helping me learn that lesson.
No, because I'm watching this with my wife, who's like, fucking no. Yeah. She's like, even if I came in and saw you snuggled up the way that Cory and Angela are snuggled up, I would have some things to say about it. And the fact that everyone is just pretending like everything is cool with, if you're not in love, it's cool if you kiss. It's cool if you snuggle. It's cool to have intimacy if you're not in love. That's not a problem. It's only if there's feelings that is that what we're walking away with?
So it's funny that you say that, because I'm thinking about college, and in college, we were very much like Lucky Feely. Everyone would like hop into a bed together. It's like all this other stuff. However, it should be noted that nobody was engaged at the time.
Engaged. That's what I mean. Engaged.
And then also there is this idea of, if you're friends and we're all friends and we're in bed or whatever, and there's like trust and also, that's absolutely, you can get it. You're friends, you're platonic, and all this other things. The real thing is, one situation was in fact in front of a camera, signed off on, and for a script. Another one was done in secret. The other couple has no idea that it happened, and it's alone in the bedroom under completely different circumstances.
All right, guys. We got to throw out a new poll. If you were Angela, would you make out with Cory to prove a point? Like, I'm sick of asking you guys the same question over and over again, but like, I need a woman's perspective on this, because I don't know.
The answer, here's the thing. For me, the answer is no. I don't know. Like, I just don't know people who are constantly testing someone's sexuality. Like, I don't know why we're doing this. I can't remember. Like, and again, maybe we're wrong, but there's just no world I know of where people are constantly being like, I'm doing this to prove a point.
And you know what's also really weird? Again, like, okay, whatever. Shawn and Topanga had their thing. Angela and Cory have their thing. We don't see enough of Topanga and Angela's friendship to understand that she feels like she can do this and it'd be cool with Topanga. Like,
Yep.
that's the thing that's really
Yep.
what's going on here, is that there's no conversation between women in this episode at all. So to understand that there's a coolness between Angela and Topanga when it comes to this, or Topanga's like, hey, we're gonna mess with Cory for a little bit, just go along with it. One scene, one sentence would have made all of this better.
It's funny because there's even a scene where Angela says, "Oh, is this about the kiss?" And Cory goes, "Oh, she told you?" And it's like, we couldn't see Topanga tell her.
Yeah. We can't have women talking to each other, especially about things that aren't men. Like, that's not what the show is.
All right, long story short, we wrap up, and again, Cory says something along the lines of, "There's no way you would see someone in a compromising position like they were and not assume the worst." And then Topanga and Shawn walk in, see Cory and Angela in the bed together, and they're like, "Well, of course nothing happened." Which, again, of course, nothing really did, but something did, and Cory's not offering up that information.
I'll tell you this, dude. If this were Euphoria,
oh,
like,
this was Euphoria.
If this was just like even Dawson's Creek, like, they would have totally gotten it on and it just been like this like secret, and like they would have had to like deal with it later on. But they're so jokey about this thing that, like, again, my wife was like, I would feel absolutely uncomfortable in this entire episode for all of these circumstances that Cory and Angela are in. So, like, I'm glad we have Angela. I'm glad we have Cory and her being friends, but like, I don't know if I like this friendship.
Yeah, well, you're right. It's not a good look all around. I'll say that.
It's not a good look.
There's mistakes made by everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that my biggest takeaway from this is that what you just said, which is, even though we as the audience should remember and should consider the fact that Cory and Topanga are newly engaged, and it is very common for an engaged couple to have the question of, oh my God, what is a long-term problem? What is a now problem?
Yeah.
My fiance and I have only really been with each other, and this is the first time I've seen my fiance kiss someone else, and I'm having feelings about it. All of that, absolutely great. But it is missed and drowned out and played for jokes. And therefore, we walk away feeling like Cory overreacted, when in reality, there is substantial discussion to be had.
I mean, we did see this when they broke up. I think it was in like season 3, right before the prom fashion show or something like that, where he did try to fight what's his face from A Walk to Remember because he saw them kissing in the hallway. So like, there is history of like Cory being jealous of seeing Topanga kiss someone else, but like, they don't make any reference to that. That's not what this is about. He doesn't say like, hey, seeing you with someone else when you're engaged to me is like really hurtful. No conversations.
Absolutely. So I think that's a really good point. Okay.
We
got to do the B storyline.
Pervy storylines. Yeah, let's get into the B storyline.
Okay. So we're in the B storyline. We are talking about Jack, Eric, and Rachel. I realized this episode, do we see Rachel leave the apartment at all? Have we seen Rachel leave the apartment at all?
Yeah, we saw her leave the apartment when she went to class, and they were like, oh, she's gone, we can take our pants off.
Okay. No. Sorry. What I meant was, do we see her outside of the apartment building? Now, you're right that there's the episode with Feeney, but for the most part, so many episodes, so many of Rachel's scenes just take place in the boys' apartment.
Yeah.
That it feels like a whole other world. It feels like it's almost like, I think, season 4 of Glee, when they're doing like New York, and then also
there's like 2 different things happening, 2 worlds.
Two different shows are going on right now. One of the things I thought of is the fact that Shawn is sleeping on the couch in the rec room, and I was like, why is he not sleeping at his brother's place?
Yeah,
like his brother, we've established, lives in the same campus. Why would he not go there? But it's because it's a different world.
It's
They're
a
in a
different world.
completely different universe at this point.
Different world.
I was waiting for that to happen. So go ahead.
Yeah, no. My whole thing with this whole separate world of Jack, Eric, and Rachel is just that, like, I don't feel like they know what the hell to do with Jack Hunter. Jack Hunter was introduced in season 5. They tried to make him Shawn's brother, but then they gave up on that after Christmas and tried to make him Eric's best friend. But now it's just him and Eric, like, every episode is, well, Rachel's our roommate, and like that's weird, right? So let's act different until she's like, no, you can act yourself. Like, why are we still doing this? Like, we saw Rachel say, be yourself in the laundry room. We saw Rachel say over and over again, please just treat me like a person, like I'm a normal person. And every episode, they're like, should we trust her to be ourselves? Like, should we treat her like a human? And I'm just like, is she not getting sick of this? Because she even says, she's like, stop talking like I can't hear you. Like, she finally like frustrated.
Yes. What was interesting to me is this idea of the boys are saying things like, she won't like us if we're truly ourselves.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, so this is a window into how cis-het straight white men think. This idea, well, and not just them, by the way. I think a lot of men feel this way, a lot of cis straight men. But this idea of, oh, I can't be myself around a girl. She won't like me. So instead, I'll put on a performance to get her to like me. And then once I have her, well, now she's stuck with me. And it's like, do you not see how disturbing that is?
That's the routine. That's what they teach us in straight school.
But is that not disturbing?
Totally. It's this. Okay, so here's what I'll say about this. Because again, I'm watching this with my wife, and she's like, you know what? There's so many things when you're living with a boy that you have to get used to that, like, I wish they would have talked about. Like, they didn't talk about them leaving hair in the sink or them not washing their sheets for 3 months or just like any of like the gross stuff that like a single man would just do when doesn't have anyone around he's trying to impress. Or a cis man, whatever. I was just going to say that, like, there was things that they could have really gotten into in terms of what it means to, like, room with, like, an opposite gender or whatever, but they just made it about bullshit. They didn't make it about anything substantial.
Yes. Because my whole thing is, as someone who, in college, I had a dorm that was full of guys, that was literally next door to a dorm filled with girls. Have you seen a girl's bathroom? And I'm not talking like,
oh, like, no. It's a mess.
Makeup counter.
Mess. They don't put any of their shit away. Yes, wife, I'm calling you out. You do your makeup, you do your hair, and it's all these like gadgets and products, and it smells great, but it's a mess.
Long hair, you're finding it
in the shower. They're like, it's like on the wall, like,
yeah. So because of that, I was like, you could have had a conversation. My first thought was like, if you want to make this better and like relatable and like girls can be messy too, just take them to Rachel's bathroom counter where the makeup is.
Subvert it. Have her be way more of a slob than they are, which I think they tried to do, but the way they tried to do that was to put her spaghetti covered feet in Eric's face, which we're going to get to in that Dan Schneider moment that comes up later in the show. But like, they don't actually like approach this from like what would it really be like for these people to live together and the things that they would be struggling with. So it just feels devoid of any realism.
And this is another one where I was like, I'm in a sitcom world.
Yeah,
we're doing sitcom things because this idea.
Things.
So okay. We gotta figure out a way. I need people to give me like name suggestions of what we're doing with the Eric and Jack thing. Because what I do think is funny is they spend this entire time being like, okay, we had to be these people in order. We're talking Martha Stewart.
I'm gonna call it the call me by your name moment for now until we get a better one.
But it's one of those things where they are talking about Rachel, and the moment they leave, they go. And I was like, okay. They go, Rachel's not here, by the way. Why do we still have our pants on?
Why do we still have our pants on?
Hands come off. They sit down. Hands go immediately in pants side by side. And I was like, there's something there.
What you guys watching? You watching that video of Topanga and Shawn? What guys doing their underwear, evidently.
I was just like, this is definitely one of those moments where it's like, if I wanted to read more into it, I could. It's so funny. I'm watching this show now called Fate or Winx or whatever. I don't know. It's this show on Netflix. It's a fairy show, literally about fairies. But one of the things that's really funny is there's this kind of triad. This couple where it's like there's a gay guy who's in love with his best friend, and the best friend is in love with this other girl, but the other girl is just like, I'm into both of you only for sexual reasons, and they're all like, okay, yeah, that'll work. And it's kind of messy and it's kind of like all this other thing, but I was like, it's actually something that, yeah, okay, let's have this conversation. Why? Like, I want them to just explore the idea of the three of them. I want them to acknowledge that there's tension here. Like, I want it to be in the real world. And in the real world, these actions are a lot more messy and nuanced than what we're getting. That's it.
Something more Chasing Amy than what we got. Yeah.
Yes, something more Chasing Amy. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Chasing Amy. That's what we're going to call this.
That's the Chasing Amy moment?
It's
the Chasing Eric moment?
Chasing Amy moment. Chasing Rachel.
Chasing Rachel. Well, okay, so I want to get into this a little bit. Before we get into just how this episode concludes, there's multiple moments where Eric talks about moms. He's like, Jack, I love your mom, by the way, who we've never met. I don't even know if we know her name. We've known barely little about Jack's mom, but Eric mentions it. And then later on to Rachel, he's like, do you have a picture of your mom, by the way? No reason. Dude, people are letting their perv flags fly. Like, they're not hiding anything back in this episode.
They're not.
Okay, let me talk about the Dan Schneider moment of the show. So, those who are not familiar, Dan Schneider, who was an executive at Nickelodeon, if you search Dan Schneider on YouTube, you're going to get a bunch of comps of teens and Nickelodeon shows doing very pervy things that this guy suggested that they do. And when I saw Rachel put her spaghetti-covered feet in Eric's face, it was such a Dan Schneider moment. It was such like a weird, why is this in the script? Why is this in the show? I felt so uncomfortable seeing her rub marinara sauce on his face with her feet. It was just a very weird, why is this on my television moment? So I just think it's strange that like they had this storyline about the boys being messy, seemingly just so they can lead to a food fight and not so they can lead to any progression of their relationships together as roommates. And that's really the overall disappointing thing from my perspective. So
completely agree. I watched this and I was like, oh, so you wanted a food fight. You wanted a food fight. By the way, have you ever done a food fight? Have you had this conversation?
I've never done a food fight. Have you done a food fight?
I've done a food fight. I've had a food fight. By the way,
man,
a few things happened. One, I broke my pinky toe during the food fight. Because you're slippery. You're just throwing shit.
Oh, yeah.
So I've actually had a food fight. It was at a camp, and it was like everyone.
Oh, you had it takes two moments.
But here's the thing: you have to clean up after a food fight, and
that doesn't sound good.
That is just, I mean, and then as an adult thinking about, like, imagine right now if you and your wife just started throwing food at each other, everything. Like, do you not just like ants and
dude, we have a golden retriever. This motherfucker, it doesn't matter what is on the coffee table, his tail comes, smacks it right off. I am constantly picking up a mess that I didn't start. And if I worked at a camp, I know I'm not, first of all, I don't know what the pay is for camp, but it's not clean up a food fight money. Come on.
And then again, you have spaghetti. I don't know. Like, so here's the thing. For me, I'm someone who's very sensitive about like textures and all this other stuff. So the idea of like just having food that, by the way, is cold and like all this other stuff. She put her feet in the sauce, and I'm just like, oh my God, why? Like, so
it's
you know what?
Again,
this really quickly. We don't kink shame if that's your thing. Good for you, Mazel.
But this is a very kinky episode. Can we agree? Between like Cory rewatching this footage of his fiance making out with someone else over
The
and over again
pervy
in his
director.
underwear, the pervy director being like, "Come on, give us more. We're gonna sell this to kids." Like, I just can't imagine that. Like, who wrote this episode? You know what? I gotta find this out. I gotta find out who wrote this episode. So David Brownfield, he has a lot of credits in like Chicago Fire, Chicago MD, Chicago PD, all of that stuff. Started in Boy Meets World though. He wrote 4 episodes, and they are all season 6 and 7 episodes. And this one, the one of the episodes he wrote, Be True, by far the worst episode of Boy Meets World of all time. I know we're gonna get there. There is no way this isn't considered the worst. I'm saying this writer is fucking bad for this show. No offense. I'm sure he does great stuff in other genres, but he just didn't know what he was doing with these characters because he made a mess out
Or
of
he was
things
getting
that...
his legs.
Or he was getting his legs. Maybe I'm being overly critical, but as someone who just loves the show so much and wants to see more with these characters, it's frustrating that their relationships aren't growing when they just keep getting caught up in just sitcom stuff. Like all of this felt like TGIF promo material. It didn't feel like anything like one for us, one for them. The fact that this is a silly episode and then next week we get the teachers like doing inappropriate stuff with students episode just kind of shows that like it was like we have to do a kind of gimmicky cartoony episode so we can dive into the real stuff next week. So maybe it's a network thing, I don't know, but this episode's ridiculous, bro.
One for them, one for us type episode.
Yeah, seems like it. The episode ends with Jack and Eric turning into skeletons because they waited for Rachel to get out the shower for too long. That's how this episode ends, guys. That's the cartoon.
Women be taking a long time in a shower.
Women be showering.
Women be showering. You know, women with their soaps and their showers.
They just take forever in the bathroom. Again, like you've been living with her for like 6 months. There is no, she suddenly started taking long showers. We suddenly started being really proper around her. It's like you guys have been living together. Where's all this newness coming from?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Again, I don't know. I enjoyed Will Friedle this episode. I thought he was funny. I think when he eats the pie off of Jack's face, it's really that was something that Will chose to do. Like they didn't tell him to do that. He was like, this will make it funnier.
Will is amazing. Like I have to say this, like regardless of all the criticism I have about Jack and Eric, Will Friedle in this season is really just like shining so bright that he makes up for a lot of the bullshit they're asking us to swallow because he's just making it so just entertaining that you kind of don't care, which is fine. Exactly. I can give the show that. Like I give Will's credit.
But also, as we wrap up, and I promise you guys we are wrapping up, as we wrap up, this is one of those things where they undermine their lesson immediately.
Yeah.
They go, so you're going to treat me like a roommate? Yes. You're going to, like, I'm your roommate, not your mom? Yes. Okay, now clean this up. I'm going to go shower. Yes, mommy.
Yes, mommy.
Oh my God. A listener did, in fact, give us feedback, and they talked about the fact that Maitland Ward did she called out Michael Jacobs in her
book?
Yeah.
Wow.
And he goes, okay, so there's a line in Maitland's book where she says Michael Jacobs told her if she ever needs anything to dominate him like she does in the laundry scene with Eric. And I just shouted ill. She also said that Ben was wondering what dates would be like with her, and she thinks that he passed out when she filmed that laundry scene.
Wow.
So
like, it's really what I'm understanding from Maitland's kind of like few comments that's put out there, and what I'm hearing from again Betsy Randall and like everyone else who's talking about the show is that there were so many things that just made them uncomfortable, but we lived in a time period where you were not encouraged to speak up or speak out or say anything. If you want a job, shut up, come to the set and put up with whatever is going to be thrown at you. And if you can put up with it, then maybe we'll have you back next week. Like, it just seems like such a toxic time period where like people who are contributing to the show in such amazing ways are feeling stifled and feeling restricted and feeling like they have to kind of put on the face behind the scenes. It's just it's sad, really. Like I'm glad that all of this is coming out, and I'm glad we're at a point where we can finally start acknowledging this. But I mean, the fact that this has been going on in Hollywood for fucking decades isn't surprising either. Yeah.
I think it's really important, and I think for anyone who's been listening this long, I want to say that I think it's important to acknowledge the duality. Like, you and I are saying things like, hey, this was a really fun, entertaining episode. It also sent a lot of really negative messages and is not something that we want to see again. You know, like, it's like the two can be true. It can be a really uncomfortable set. It can be something that the storylines don't make sense, and we're actually kind of giving conflicting messages, and we are not giving credit where credit is due, and we're not diving deep into topics that we bring up, but it's also really funny.
Yeah.
And that's allowed. Like, they did a good job at distracting us from the fact that they actually didn't say anything.
I think the reason why Boy Meets World, at least with us kind of giving it this criticism of just being like, the reason why it's tough is because there's a duality to Boy Meets World itself. There's times where you walk into an episode and you have no idea, is this going to be an episode that's just silly and made for laughs? Or is this going to be like a touch my soul, stay with me for the rest of my life, important moment? And we get both. It's a crapshoot. Sometimes you get something that's just like, wow, I can't believe they had Shawn, go through this. I'm really emotionally touched. I'm invested. And then other times we get spaghetti feet in the face. And so it's just hard to kind of find a through line in terms of tone sometimes when we're going back and forth from such silly extremes to such dramatic extremes. So
absolutely. And that's what I want to say. Did I enjoy, you know what, let's just kind of wrap it up.
Let's wrap it up.
What was your bra moment?
The whole episode. My bra moment was I had a bunch. Angela kissing Cory to prove a point. Any woman kissing or flirting with a guy to prove a point, I don't feel like is realistic at all. And again, just the spaghetti covered feet in the face made me very, very uncomfortable. It just goes to show that like they could have really handled that storyline differently, and they chose to make it silly. And at the end of it, it's just like, hey, we're just going to be slobs. So to quote my wife, when she starts finding crunchy socks around the apartment after this, she's going to regret the way she handled the situation. So that's my bra moment.
That's really funny. Okay. In reality, there were several things where I was just kind of like side-eyeing quite a bit. I do think like the idea of Angela just kissing Cory, especially now that we've talked about like them being engaged and all this other stuff, just it is one of those things where it's like but also you brought up the Dan Snyder connection, and I can't not see it.
I'm so sorry I called it that. It's just
no, but like you're right. I'm like, who was this for? In all honesty, you know what I mean?
Like the writer of this episode has some deep kinks that he's exploring through these characters, and we're just getting really to know this writer
or the
David
director,
Brownfield,
to be honest, because like we don't know that the script said she puts her feet in, but it reminds me of like in the A storyline how the director was like, oh, you know what we should do now? And it's like, why are we doing this? Who is this for? This was supposed to be one thing. This is supposed to be a food fight. Why is her feet in the spaghetti sauce? So
anyway, not here to kink shame. Not here to kink shame.
Not here to kink shame. But are the kink question? Maybe?
Yeah, I have a question if kinks belong in the show, but like I'm not here to shame anyone.
Exactly.
Beanie, what are we supposed to be walking away with as the lesson of this episode?
I think the lesson of the episode from the A storyline is not everything needs to be read into. It's the lesson that they want us to have. I feel like the better lesson is when you are engaged, you have to start having these conversations and thinking about, is this a lifelong, like, is this a now problem or a forever problem?
That's a great lesson. That's not what this episode
Oh no,
talks about
not at all.
That's a great lesson. I wish that
but I
was
think
the lesson.
I think that you have let me see that's something that would have been touched on.
Yeah. My Feeny lesson of this episode, my true takeaway is that it is completely okay to be physically intimate with people you don't have strong
The
feelings
history
for.
with.
If you don't love them, it's cool. It's 100% okay, and you have no reason to freak out. Your fiance has no reason to freak out. It's just groovy, man. Like that's the lesson.
It's all groovy, baby.
It's all groovy, baby.
Okay, what are you giving this episode grades?
Oh, capital C, Caterpillar.
Oh, okay, that's cool. It's so funny that you say that, because in reality, I was thinking to myself, what would I? And I think my first reaction was C, but I'm also gonna say I laughed. This is iconic. It's so I think I'm going to give it a C plus. I'm gonna give it a C plus because I enjoyed this episode. I think from memory, I would have given it a B. Watching it, it's kind of C. Even talking through it, I really enjoyed this episode. But you're right, it's all over the place. It doesn't quite nail anything, and it just felt like.
And it recaps lessons these characters should have learned already. I think that's the most frustrating thing about Boy Meets World, is that sometimes they repeat these lessons and these characters have these huge epiphanies that we've seen them have already. So like that was frustrating.
But again, you're doing 22 episodes. Like
you only got so much. You only got so much. Okay. Homework. Let's get into homework.
What do you have?
Okay. All right. Well, here's a little something. Have you started watching the Amazon Prime show A League of Their Own?
I have not, and it's so funny because I was looking for homework and I was like, oh, you know what would be really cool, but I haven't watched yet. Have you started watching it?
Okay, so I don't know if I'm done with the first season, but I've definitely watched a handful of episodes, and I have to say I'm loving it. Abby Jacobson does such a fantastic job. She executive produced this, and she's writing she's doing such a fantastic job. I saw a picture of their writers' room, so eclectic, brown, queer, everything. Like everyone is contributing to this narrative of, hey, these women were pioneers in baseball at a time when the men weren't allowed, and a majority of them were LGBTQ. So like, let's actually tell those stories of these people from this time period that we don't get to see, and it's beautifully done. And the biggest thing I want to point out specifically for this podcast is that it has a Boy Meets World alum.
Who?
Fucking Eli from season 3 has a role in this episode as the father of one of the main characters, Maxine, who's kind of going through like trying to figure out her sexuality and things like that. But he plays the dad on that show, and he does a great job. And he's seen as like the sexy dad at church. I don't know what that means, but
you know what that means.
Oh.
You know what that means.
But anyways, the show is just really well done. It's really great, and like they're doing I feel like they're expanding upon the movie in ways I didn't think they were capable of. Like I was just like, oh, it's the movie. Okay, it's gonna be girls playing baseball. It's so much more than that. And so I just strongly encourage everyone to check it out and check out Eli.
Absolutely. Okay, so for me, my homework this week is, I believe we talked about this previously. Oh, actually, we didn't talk about this. Have you seen the show Rap Shit? On
no,
HBO?
I haven't.
Okay. So I'll say this right off the bat. It's not for everybody, but for those who are about it, you'll be about it. If you liked Insecure, if you like imperfect characters in your storytelling, it's really fun. It's about two young women in Miami entering the rap industry,
entering the game.
Yeah, it's almost modeled after the City Girls. They are executive producers of it as well.
Oh wow. Okay.
And it's a fun show. It's very Issa Rae, it's very Insecure, it's very much like you get like a moment of heroic, and then immediately after you get someone embarrassing themselves. And so we had fun with it. We marathon, we binged the entire season. Again, what Issa did, which was really smart, is the songs that the girls make on the show are also available as singles. So, and they're
She
good
gleed it.
songs.
She gleed it.
She 100% gleed it. And here's the thing, and it's good. It was smart of her to do. You will like it. It's Florida. It is Florida. You watch it and you're like, oh, I watched it. No, these are Miami girls. like I was like, oh, these are Miami girls. For
See,
sure.
sometimes knowing Florida is a gift and a curse. All right.
You watch it and you're like, so in any other kind of context, you could see this as a caricature or whatever. But when you know,
this
is just them. That's
See,
just
I can
real.
point out people who are from Tampa on site alone. Do you understand what I mean by that? Like, it's not from like a judgmental thing. Like, I know the spots, and like I see someone, and I'm like, oh, they're from Tampa.
I get it. I get what you're saying. You're like, oh, that's a Tampa hoe.
That's just a Tampa. Yeah.
And what's even funnier is like I at my new job, I was talking to someone. They're like, "Oh, I'm from Tampa." I was like, "Are you from Tampa?" I'm from Orlando. Like there's like a little rivalry that they have, and then don't get us anyone started on Miami because that's a whole other thing.
It's a whole other game. It's a whole other beast.
Absolutely. So check it out. Honestly, good music, good characters, great storytelling, very complex, very much like, and it's also very insightful. It didn't have to be insightful, and it's a very insightful show that gives depth to a lot of characters that I think you very easily could have written off. So I don't know. I encourage everyone to check it out.
I'll have to check it out. Yeah.
Rap Shit on HBO.
All right. I'll have to look into it. So I guess that's it then. We did it. Guys,
That's it.
606 Hogs and Kisses. There it is.
Thank you guys for going on this journey with us. As we said earlier, remember to leave us a 5-star rating. Like we're here, we're doing it now. If you leave us a 5-star rating,
I really love the voice messages too. Like if you guys can leave voicemail, like even if you just leave a voice message on Instagram, we'll find a way to play it like we did the other one because those are great. Love that.
Absolutely. You can find us at Bruh Meets World on all the places. Email us at bruhmeetsworld@gmail.com. T, is there anything else you want to say?
Like I said, we're doing video episodes on YouTube, and now we have our video episodes on Spotify, which you probably know if you're on Spotify, but if you're not, go ahead and check us out there because we do have video episodes that we're streaming as well. And no, I don't really have anything else. Oh, the one thing I want to tell you is completely separate from this episode, and I forgot to mention this in morning announcements, which is that I'm so annoyed, I'm so frustrated that the Pod Meets World live show happens when I'm out of town. I moved to LA thinking I was going to see all these concerts, I was going to see all these comedians. Everyone comes to town when I'm out of fucking town. And the strangest coincidence of all, I'm in Philadelphia that weekend. What?
I think that's hilarious.
Oh my God. Anyways.
Oh my God. Yeah. Okay. So again, thank you guys so much for joining us. We will wrap up by telling you, remember to dream,
to try,
and to do good.
Do some damn good, y'all.
Later, bros.
Later, bruh.
When this boy meets world.